Hello students, this is our first video lecture on the subject of object oriented programming in C++, and in this lecture I am going to introduce you to the concepts of object oriented programming, because object oriented programming concepts are the basis of C++. So without understanding the OOPS concepts, there is no way we can understand and appreciate the advantages of C++ over the C programming. So in the first video lecture I am going to give you a non-technical introduction to OOPS, and later I will give you a technical overview of the OOPS concepts. So here I am going to explain all the concepts relating to the real world situations. First of all, we have to understand what are the requirements, or in other words, what are the limitations of the current programming, that is C programming. So we have already studied C programs, and we can write any complex program in C. C is a very powerful programming language which we are all familiar with. Now in that case, what is lacking in C, so that we can discuss about how it has been compensated or improved in C++. So we are now going to look at the limitations or expectations we want to be included into C. First of all, generalization, and then representing a way to represent real life entities, and hiding complexity, access control, reusability, and the primitive data types being insufficient. We will look at each one one by one in each of the slides. So first, generalization. Just observe the two pictures which I have presented in the slide. In the first picture, it's a very familiar picture, like a tailor who is stitching dress materials for people. So, and in the second case, photograph also, it's a similar one. They are not actually totally different professions, but only difference is the scale. The first case, this person is actually going to have some maximum of some few hundred customers, or at most some 1,000 customers, and for each customer he will take the measure, and then he will stitch accordingly as for the measure he has taken for the persons. And this is a very laborious task. It's a tedious task, and for each person he has to repeat. In fact, for the same person he has to repeat later if he visits again. So but this particular person is going to be following this for his lifetime, and he is fine with that, because his customer base is very limited. But imagine that a major company like Van Heusen which is manufacturing dresses for lakhs of people across the country, following the first model. It's almost impossible to take measure of each customer and stitch the materials. So what they do instead is that they just generalize the customers under different categories. For example, sizes. So 39 is one particular size, then all the people who are either 39 or closer to 39 are accommodated in that category. Similarly, they identify 40 as another category, and so on, 42, 44, and so on. So they are never going to look into the individual customer and stitch the dress appropriately for him. Instead, they are only going to prepare materials for the general category. So this is the only way the situation can be managed when the customer base is huge. So this is we will equate this to programming later. So similarly, when it comes to programs, as long as you are just writing simple programs or small programs, you can manage with a simple approach. But when you want to develop major projects for companies, then you can't manage the huge volume of code with the simple C based development. Then you will have to go for some sophisticated approach through which you can manage the complexity. So we will see how this has been taken care by OOPS. But problem that is addressed is, somehow we have to be able to generalize the given situations. Secondly, hiding complexity. So take this example, that mobile phone. So everyone is nowadays is having a mobile phone, or minimum more than one mobile phone in a lot of cases. So, and the user of the mobile phone are not actually fitting into one category, that some of them are uneducated, they don't even know how to write. So even those people are able to make use of the mobile phone. That is because it has a very simple interface for even a layman to use a mobile phone. Imagine that you expose the complexity of the mobile phone to everyone, such that only if you understand the mobile phone thoroughly with all its component details, the architectures, you can use a mobile phone, then hardly half of the people who are currently using would prefer to use a mobile phone, because nobody prefers complexity. So you are hiding the complexity and making it look like a very simple thing. So a mobile phone looks very simple to a ordinary person. He doesn't have to understand the complexities that are inherent inside the mobile phone, and he can just manage it with the simple interface. So this is a very important requirement when you want to sell your products to a large volume of people. So you have to hide the complexity. You don't need to expose the complexity or of the implementation to ordinary people. The developer of the mobile phone has to understand that, but not necessarily the user of the mobile phone. This is applicable to anything, whether it's washing machine or it's television or car. Everywhere the complexity is hidden, and that's what makes them to be highly popular. The next requirement is representing real life entities. So when you are writing simple programs like you did in C programs, you are going to be largely doing simple mathematical programs like finding the factorial kind of programs, so Fibonacci series. So in that case it's sufficient, C programming is sufficient. But as you move on to better programming, you have to develop programs that deal with business problems. For example, you have to write programs to manage a company, or you have to write a program for the car manufacturing company, an airplane reservation system company, railway reservation, even financial companies. So in such cases, you will have to be able to represent lot of real life entities. For example, for a car manufacturing company, you should be able to represent a car in your programs, which is very cumbersome when it comes to C programming. And so we need a better way by which we can manage this requirement, that real life entities has to be seamlessly represented in our programs. The next expectation we have is reusability. So when you develop a solution first time, you have to work hard in conceiving that solution. But once you have developed a solution, and when you want a similar solution for another client or another situation, you should not be made to rewrite the whole solution again for the second situation, or the second requirement may be slightly different. So even in that case, you can't reuse the first solution, you will have to rewrite it with the slight change. So what is preferred is that I should be able to reuse my previous solution. For example, in this case, why I have presented the various cars is that, imagine there is a car manufacturing company like Hyundai. They make multiple designs of cars, or multiple segment of cars, like they make an SUV, they make a hatchback, they make a sedan, they also have a lot of other variants. But basically there is a common characteristic that exists among all the cars. So whenever they want to design a new car, they don't have to start the work from the scratch, but instead they can use their existing platform and make some changes in it so that it becomes a new design. That is the way they can manage the design process in a shorter period of time. Otherwise it will take a lot of time to come out with a new design or new model. So instead they take their existing model and make the necessary change and present it as a new model, which is generally termed as a platform. That is what we are also expecting in our programs. So once we have developed or conceived a solution in the past, it's better to be able to reuse that solution with the necessary enhancements or modifications into that, so that we save a lot of time in rewriting the whole process. This is another thing. Access control. So this is actually a term that describes the ability to control access. Something like, for example, in the first case, if you want to access your bank account, then you must possess the ATM card, as well as you should also remember your PIN number. So only if you have these two, you can access your bank account and withdraw money from the account. Similarly, in the second case, you have the mobile phone, for which you can set a pattern. So only if somebody knows your pattern, he can access your mobile phone. Even if he gets your mobile phone, he still cannot access the content of the mobile phone without knowing the pattern. But the third is actually more significant example, because in the first two, it's either no, no or yes. That is, a person can either access or he cannot access. If he has the PIN number and ATM, he can access. Without it, he can't access. But in the third case, you can actually control how much access a person has to be provided. For example, in your Windows system, you generally have an admin login, and you can create a lot of additional user logins. The significance of admin login is that he gets a complete access into your system. Especially if you are the owner of your computer, then you become the admin and you can do anything inside your computer. You can make all changes as you wish. But being a normal user, lot of limitations will be added, and his access right will be restricted. So in this case, everybody can access the computer, but how much access they get is differentiated, and we need this kind of access control to be added to your programs, which was not impossible in C programming. If you just recall your C programs, in your C program, any function can access any data. Any data can be accessed by any function, as long as there is a visibility. The only restriction that is available there is that the variable has to be visible to the function. For example, one function cannot access the local variable of another function, whereas if there is a global variable and if you have got 10 functions in your program, then all the 10 functions can access the global variable and you cannot restrict it. For example, I want to enforce a restriction that only 5 of them to functions have to access that global variable, and remaining 5 should not be able to access. That is not possible in C. In C, it gives unrestricted access to data, which is not ideal when you are developing sensitive programs, like programs that deal with the money or something. So you want to control access to your data. We have that is the also lacking in the existing C programming. The next one is primitive data types are insufficient to represent everything. So what do you mean by primitive data types? Are the integer, character, or the built-in data types. So every programming language has been added with some basic data types, expecting that the programmers will be requiring them, like integer, character, float, double. But not all the requirements or expectations of the programmers can be fulfilled with those data types. Sometimes we want to have something else. For example, here this is a color palette. You all have seen it in your computers. So whenever you want to change the color of something, then we can just open this and it gives a standard color options. So see, we have got hundreds of colors here. I can choose any color and then press OK button, that color will be updated. But even this is not sufficient for all the users. So in that case, it also provides one more option called custom colors. So with the custom colors, you can create your own color. So we can generate our own color and use it for our purpose. Similarly, when people are not satisfied or fulfilled with the existing primitive data types, they should be provided with an option to create their own data types, which we are going to describe as user defined data type. So I should be able to create my own data type, of course making use of the primitive data types. So I will be using integer, character, float and double, but I will generate a new data type by combining some of them. In fact, you are kind of familiar with this concept under C itself. There it was called a structure. So you when you define a new structure, you are actually creating your own data type. So structure will have a number of members, and then it becomes a integrated data type or variable. But in C++, we are going to follow the same idea, but it is going to be a lot more powerful. So that is what makes the C++ different from C. So we are borrowing the concept of structure in C++, but we are going to make it more powerful in C++. We will discuss how it becomes powerful in C++ in the later lectures. So basically, user defined data types has to be available, has to be provided. Okay, now we are going to look at the evolution of programming languages. So the basic principle that has driven the programming evolution is the complexity. So when people started using computers, they were writing few lines of code. Their programs were just about some 10 lines of code, and in that case they used machine language. Machine language is like a combination of zeros and ones, which is very difficult to learn. But at the time that was sufficient, because they were just writing few lines of code. So binary machine instructions were generally used. But as the size of programs were growing, it was not easier. It became very difficult. So then the next invention happened is assembly language. So people developed assembly language, which was comparatively simpler to code large programs. So it made use of something called symbolic representations, so which was a kind of English words which replaces the machine instructions. So it was helpful to some extent. But then as programs continue to grow, assembly language itself felt to be tedious. Then high level languages came into the picture. So high level languages are the languages like C, C++, Java, those languages, and they started to emerge into the picture. And and also we have something called procedural language. So procedural language is nothing but programs which are in fact to start with, high level languages can be classified into three categories: procedural languages, structured programming languages, and OOPS languages. So procedural languages was the first in the hierarchy, which was about writing programs as collection of instructions. So if you just happen to read a COBOL program or a Fortran program, you will easily understand this point. A COBOL program is going to have all the instructions typed one by one. First instruction, second instruction, third, and so on. So all instructions are just bundled together under a single program, and it's also a top-down approach. And it is just about the procedural language is just giving statements to be executed by the computer. It tells the order of execution, that's all. But once again the complexity of programs were growing, so structured programming entered. Then the idea of structured programming is that you are now able to divide your programs into functions or modules. So you can write programs comprising of functions that you have already practiced in C programming. So when you write a C program, you can have any number of functions into it. So you can divide your logic in terms of functions and write multiple functions. So functions are very efficient way to deal with complexity, because you can divide the logic itself into multiple functions and just integrate all the functions. It becomes a single program. So that is the essence of structured programming, which helped to reduce the complexity so that you can deal with moderately complex programs easily. And structured languages are categorized by a support for standalone subroutines. That's what I pointed out. And also, when you say that there are functions in your program, local variables also becomes available. So you can differentiate variables as local variables and global variables. But under the structured procedural programming, there is no such thing as local variable. Everything is global by default. And the idea of breaking a program into functions can be further extended into grouping a number of functions together into a larger entity called a module. So then modules are nothing but collections of functions. Once again we have reached the same situation. Structured programming is not sufficient enough to manage the complexity, and then came the object oriented methodology. So object oriented methodology is the third one which emerged, which further reduced the complexity of programs. Okay, now we have entered into the OOPS era. So object oriented programming took the best ideas from all the previous evolutionary concepts, and then it presented a new way of writing or organizing programs. So the basic difference between the OOPS programs and the structured program is that in the conventional or the structured programming, the programs are written around the code, that is what is happening. So what is happening is the basis of or the focus of programs until structured programs. The data is sidelined. What is being operated by the function is secondary. What is the action is the action becomes more important than the data that is being acted upon. It's okay. I'm going to take an example which you may feel like it's a horrible example, but just take it in a lighter way. Do not take it very seriously. Imagine that a surgeon is performing surgery on a patient. See, in this case, the surgeon can have two perceptions. One is he may be very keen to conduct the procedure or the surgery as per the procedure he learnt in his course, MBBS course. Okay, so like okay, probably MS course, which means that he has to perform the various steps. First step is open, you cut the stomach and you take away the whatever the stone or something, and then stitch it again. In that this is one option. Another option is focusing on the patient. Okay, what is the limitation of the first case is that when you are very keen about the procedure you are going to follow in the surgery, what happens to the patient becomes secondary. Whether the patient is going to be alive during the surgery or not is not the business of the doctor. For him, he has to strictly follow the procedure and leave the room. If the patient is lucky and if he is fortunate, he will survive. That is the drawback of the first approach, where you are focusing on the action, not the data. But the second the approach a good doctor would follow is that he has to do what is good for the patient. His focus is not performing the surgery properly as per the procedure. He may have to adjust the surgery, or he may even have to abandon the surgery if he thinks that is the best option for the patient. So here it's patient centric treatment. There it is treatment is priority, patient is secondary. In the same way, when you write these programs under structured programming, your focus is on the code, not on the data. Whereas under OOPS, the data is the most important ingredient. Accordingly, the code is developed. You may partially understand my explanation right now, but it will become clear as we actually get into the development of OOPS based programs under C++. For example, your program written in structured language such as C is defined by its functions. So in that case, if you write, I have already touched this point. When you write a program in C comprising of functions, any function can access any data which is global. I am talking about global data. Any function can access any of the global data. We can't control the access, or we can't restrict the access of the data. But under object oriented programming, the programs are organized around data, with the key principle being data controlling access to code. So it is the data that determines which code can access itself and which code cannot access itself. So that is going to be restricted by the data. So in an object oriented language, you define the data and the routines that are permitted to access on that data. Thus a data type defines precisely what sort of operations can be applied to that data. So we will be exploring that. So this is a comparison chart which is for the comparison of procedure oriented programming and object oriented programming. In procedure oriented programming, programs are divided into functions, whereas in object oriented programming they were divided into objects. This follows a top down approach, whereas this one follows a bottom up approach. That means that you take the smallest element in your program and then build your program accordingly. The smallest element is obviously the data. So the data is taken as the most important component of your program, and accordingly you write your code. And there is no access specifier you can have in your procedural programming. As I told you, you can't control access. Any code can access any data, but that is available in OOPS. And you can create new data. You can't create new data type in the procedure programming, but you can create a structure kind of a partial user defined data type, but not full fledged. But you can create full fledged user defined data types under OOPS. And procedure programming does not have any proper way for hiding data. So you can't hide data, but data hiding is a useful functionality of object oriented programming. And in procedure programming, overloading is not possible. You may not understand what do you mean by overloading, but it will become clear as we progress in the syllabus. So overloading is included under object oriented programming. In procedure programming, function is more important than data, whereas in object oriented programming, data is more important than function. Not good for representing procedural programming. Okay, real world entities, we have already seen that when we want to write programs that are that has to be applied for a lot of real world situations, it's not that convenient to represent the real world entities in your programs under the procedural as well as the structured programming. But object oriented programming has got one of its objectives as representing of the real world entities. So you can easily represent any real world entity in OOPS. And these are examples for the available languages under the structured or procedural programming, and C++, Java, Python, C# are examples for OOPS programs. And actually these are the various building blocks of the OOPS concepts. So it starts with what is an object, and then we have the class, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and encapsulation. So I am going to focus on each one. As I already said in the beginning, I am going to only focus on the non-technical discussion of these concepts, not going to be actually discussing the real implementations in a technical point of view. The reason I am avoiding a technical discussion is that you first have to grasp the basic idea behind this. Only then you can appreciate the actual implementation. So that is what my plan for this. So first we take objects. Object oriented programming is based on the concept of objects. In other words, object is the building blocks of OOPS. So every concept of OOPS is implemented with the help of objects, and it is through the objects we are going to represent all the real world entities. We can represent the pen, pencil, car, everything, whatever we want to write. It is through the objects. I think we have already answered answer for one of the question, how to represent real world entities. It is through objects, and the object has got two aspects. One is the state and the behavior. For example, if you take a dog as an object, then its state is it may have a color, it may belong to a breed, it may have a name. Okay, so these are all the various states of a class, object. What do you mean by state is the various attributes of an object, various characteristics of an object are termed as the state. For example, for a car, the state could be its brand, its category, whether it's a sedan or a hatchback or something, its color, So these are all various states. And similarly, the behavior of a dog is like it may be barking, eating, like that. Similarly, for a car, the behavior could be it is running, it is just sparked, it's reverse, going in reverse, kind of various behaviors we can identify for cars. So that is the basic idea of an object. An object is the basic element or the fundamental element of a OOPS concept, through which we are going to implement the real world entities. Next, what is a class? A class is the blueprint of an object. See, object is the most important element of a OOPS program. But how do you create an object? That requires a class. So creation of object is done with the help of a class. A simple analogy you can understand this point is that in the left side you can see a blueprint which is about this particular house. So they first designed this house, and the engineer, the civil engineer receives this plan, and then he converts this into an actual building. So this is prepared by an architect, and this one is constructed by the civil engineer. So this is a class, and this is equivalent to a object. So what you understand from this example is that a class is nothing but a plan. It's nothing but a plan or a map or a blueprint, whereas an object is the actual entity that is created with the help of the class. So you can only occupy, or you can only make use of the object, not the class. Classes do not occupy memory. It is only the objects that get the memory allocation. And each object is said to be an instance of a particular class. Instance is nothing but you create a memory out of this class, which is called as a object, and that's what we are referring as instance. And through a class we convey our requirements of our expected objects. It's something like through this plan we convey all our requirements, how many rooms should be there, all the plan is conveyed through this plan. And object is an implementation of a class. Okay, next concept is inheritance. So inheritance is actually meant for facilitating reusability. Again, take the same example that the Hyundai is manufacturing a number of cars, but they don't want to repeat the same process of designing cars again and again. So what they generally do is that they maintain a car design which comprises of the common characteristics. For example, every car will have 4 wheels, and there will be 4 doors, and there will be dashboards. Kind of there are common characteristics that are applicable to all the cars. The individual cars are different in various other factors. So they can create a common design for which is applicable to all the cars, then use it and refine it to create very individual differences. That is the idea of this concept is called inheritance. And we have now answered one more question. We want to create a reusability. So inheritance is the one that facilitates reusability under object oriented programming. Inheritance allows classes to be arranged in a hierarchy that represents easier type of relationships. Another standard example that people generally use for conveying the inheritance is the shape class. So what you can see here is that triangle is a shape, the rectangle is a shape, square is also a shape. They have differences, but they all belong to a category called shape. So you can create shape as a common class, and then modify it to make it suitable for triangle, and also to make it suitable for rectangle. That is the idea of inheritance. This avoids the repetition. So you don't have to write everything from the scratch. You can maintain common characteristics as a common class or a base class, and then use it while creating similar classes in future. The next idea of object oriented programming is polymorphism. Okay, I'm going to take an example to convey the idea behind polymorphism. Again, it's a non-technical example. So for example, I have a television at home and also a set-top box and an air conditioner. But my problem is that for each device I have to use a different remote control. So I have to maintain a lot of remote controls, and I also get confused. Suddenly I will be pressing a remote and the TV won't be responding, and then I will realize that I am using a air conditioner remote or set-top box remote for controlling a television. Similarly, while writing programs also we will be facing this kind of a situation. So we have written lot of functions, and when you want to make use of make a call to a particular function, we get confused which function is appropriate. What is ideal is I just need one universal remote which works across all the devices. So it is not my business to decide which remote to use for a device. The remote should decide that. For example, when I show the remote against the television, the remote should recognize that it's because it's in front of a television, it must send the signal appropriate for the television. Similarly, when I use it against the air conditioner, it should customize itself to work according to the air conditioner. This is the ideal remote control. In the same way, when you write programs, when you have thousands of methods available, you should not be burdened to decide which method is suitable for your purpose. The programming language or the compiler should choose for your requirement which method is most suitable. So that is what is going to be the basis of polymorphism. But polymorphism is going to be having lot more other details behind it, but the basic idea is polymorphism is the ability of an object to take many forms. The next is abstraction. So abstraction is basically about hiding complexity, whichever thing it is. For example, I showed you the example of a mobile phone. So in the mobile phone, if you just open the box of your mobile phone, cover of your mobile phone, you will see a lot of complex mechanism inside. But when you close the cover and just look at your the screen, it looks very simple. So that is what abstraction. Abstraction is avoiding you don't show all the complex details of the items. Show what is needed. So I don't need to see the complexity of my mobile phone to use it. I just need to see the simple Android interface. That is the essence of abstraction. Show only what is necessary and avoid unnecessary information from the user, and this helps in reducing the complexity. Yeah, okay, taking an example from programming, let us say I want to sort a list of values, and there are different sort methods available. So when I want to sort a list of numbers, what I need to know is I just need to know how to invoke the sort method, which is inbuilt method. There is a function called sort. If you pass your value, it will do the sorting. So I don't need to bother about, or I don't need to learn about what is the logic used in that sort method, or what is the algorithm behind the sort method, and how it is actually sorting. I don't need to know that. I will pass sort, I will get the result as sorted list. Same way you are actually using the printf and scanf. None of us actually know how printf works or how scanf works. What we just know is how to use printf and how to use scanf, the syntax. Only if you learn the syntax, you can use it. It is enough. The same way, abstraction is hiding the implementation complexity and just presenting a simple interface. The next is called encapsulation. So encapsulation is about capsuling the data with the methods. Okay, for example, what is a capsule? A capsule is something that comprises of different medicines. So when you look at a capsule, you don't need to know what are all inside. You can just easily consume it. So that is what capsuling. Capsuling is about bundling multiple medicines and putting them into a single tablet or capsule. Same way, under OOPS programming, the meaning of encapsulation is that we bundle the bundle the data with the methods. See, now we are talking about the access control. We have seen that in C, any function or any method can access any data, but that is not the case with the C++ or OOPS programming, because of the encapsulation. So through encapsulation, we are able to merge or bundle the data with the methods, and only those methods which are included into the capsule of the data can access those data, and some other method that is outside that capsule or cannot access the data. So that is encapsulation. So encapsulation is used to hide the values or state of a structured data objects inside a class, preventing direct access to them by clients. So we have just briefly discussed about the OOPS concepts, and we are yet to discuss the OOPS concepts with the actual implementation details. So which I will be making the video later and share it with you. So this is the summary of what we have discussed so far. OOPS concepts are added to C to enhance its capability to manage complex programs, to represent real world entities, to facilitate reusability, and to provide access control. So none of these were available in C programs, and now we are going to enjoy the benefits of all of this. And C is nothing but OOPS with the C++. So what do we mean by C++ is that when you attach OOPS with the C, it becomes a C++. And object is the fundamental element of object oriented programming, through which we are able to implement various OOPS concepts. And class is the mechanism to express the attributes and functionalities of the required object. So with this I am concluding this video lecture. We will continue to discuss the OOPS concepts in the next video lecture. Thank you.